Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmad yasya yato nivyad itaratas chartesu avigyaswarat.
Janmad yasya yatam vayaritaratas chate swavigyaswarat.
Tene brahma hridaya adhikavaye muyanti yat surayaha.
Tene brahma hridaya adhikavaye muyanti suraya.
Tejo varimadam yata vinimaya yatra trisargo misha.
Tejo varimrida jata vinimayo jatra trisagurmisya.
Damna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
Dhamna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
O my Lord, Sri Kṛṣṇa, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Sri Kṛṣṇa, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
Offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
Offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Kṛṣṇa because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Sri Kṛṣṇa because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
Of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of three modes of nature.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Kṛṣṇa.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Kṛṣṇa.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma pujita kaitavutra.
Dharma pujita kaitavutra.
Paramo nirmat saranam satam.
Paramo nirmat saranam satam.
Vedyam vastavam atravastu.
Vedyam vastavam astravastu.
Shivadam tapa trayon mulanam.
Shivadam tapo trayamulanam.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni krite.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni krite.
Kim va parer ishvaraha.
Kim va parer ishvaraha.
Sadyo hridi avarudyate tra.
Sadyo hridi avarudyate tra.
Kritibhi sususubhistakshana.
Kritibhi sususubhistakshana.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in their heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity.
Is sufficient in itself for God realization.
It's sufficient in itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
By this culture of knowledge.
By this culture of
the
knowledge.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam.
Sukhamukat amrita dravya samitam.
Sukhamukat amrita dravya sangitam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Muhur aho rasika bhuvi bhavakaha.
Muhur aho rasika bhuvi bhavakaha.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
The mature fruit of the desire to Vedic literature.
The mature fruit of the desire to Vedic literature.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all.
Including liberated souls.
Including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Kṛṣṇa
Shrimvantam Swakata Kṛṣṇa
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Vidyantakstohi Abhadrani
Vidyantastohi Abhadrani
Vidunati Srihitsatam.
Vidunati Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literature,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad
is
Gita.
itself righteous activity.
It is self-righteous
And
activity.
for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the devotees constantly engaged in hearing from him.
Astapresu Bhadresu
Nasta Prayeshwa Bhadrishu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Tamasloke
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistake.
Bhakti Bhavati Nastiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops his strength.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the
and
devotees,
from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in the devotional service.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tada Rajastamo Bhava.
kamaloba dayaschaye cheta itar anavidam
Shetaita
stitvam sattve prasidati.
Sitam Savi Prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By developing devotional
one
service,
becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasanna manaso
Evam prasanna manasu
bhagavat bhakti yogataha
bhagavat bhakti yogata
bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate.
bhakti samrasijaya.
When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service,
Becomes enlivened by devotional service.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
And understand the sense of God.
Vidyate hridaya grantis
Vidyate hridaya grantis.
chidyante sarvasamsaya
Te sarvasamshaya.
shiyante chasya karmani drista evat manishware. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of samsayam samagram,
And enables to come at once to the stage of samsham samagra.
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
Understanding of the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, Verse 34. Sanidyate Mahayogin Patakani Mahantyapi
Akani mayanchapi
Sadyo Nasyanti Vaipunsam
sadyo nasyanti vaipungsam
Vishnor Eva Suretaraha.
Vishnu eva suretaraha.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Just as the atheist cannot remain in the presence of the personality of Godhead, so also the invulnerable sins of man are immediately vanquished in your presence, O saint, O great mystic. So you notice it says invulnerable sins. That means they're not vulnerable, they can't be defeated. But yet, by the presence of the personality of Godhead, even such invulnerable or such sins that seem to be impossible to overcome are immediately vanquished in the presence of the Lord, or in the presence of a saint. O saint, O great mystic. There are two classes of human beings, namely the atheist and the devotee of the Lord. The devotee of the Lord, because of manifesting godly qualities, is called a demigod, whereas the atheist is called a demon. The demon cannot stand the presence of Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. The demons are always busy in trying to vanquish the personality of Godhead, but factually, as soon as the personality of Godhead appears, by either his transcendental name, form, attributes, pastimes, paraphernalia, or variegatedness, the demon is at once vanquished. It is said that a ghost cannot remain as soon as the holy name of the Lord is chanted. The great saints and devotees of the Lord are in the list of his paraphernalia. And thus, as soon as a saintly devotee is present, the ghostly sins are at once vanquished. That is the verdict of all Vedic literatures. One is recommended, therefore, to associate only with saintly devotees so that worldly demons and ghosts cannot exert their sinister influence. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, Prabhupada definitely talks about ghosts. He puts them on the same level as demons. So there are such things as spirits who don't have a gross body, but have been cursed to exist with infinite number of material desires that they can't satisfy because they don't have a material body. They just have mind, intelligence, and false ego. So this is a great distress for such ghostly people. And usually someone will become a ghost if they commit suicide. And what do the ghosts do? They look around for people who don't bathe regularly, don't cut their fingernails, have really long hair that's disheveled, and like to smoke marijuana. They have also dreadlocks, and to hide their bodily odor, they put on patchouli. Whenever you see someone walk by who smells like patchouli, you know they smoke marijuana, and they usually don't bathe regularly. You know what patchouli is? You know? No. It's an essential oil. It's a type of wood. It has that woody, musty odor. And it's very popular with people who smoke marijuana. It sort of masks the scent of marijuana and also the bodily odors. So ghosts are looking for people like that because whenever a person takes drugs, their desire to live is weakened. And when they are under the influence of drugs, they're vulnerable to ghosts. And usually, when a person is sleeping, they often, especially the drug addicts, they open their mouth, or keep their mouth open, and then some saliva comes out of their mouth and has a very bad smell to it and taste. And that's the sign that the ghost entered into the body. And now once the ghost enters into the body, the way you know that the person is inhabited, in other words, the ghost takes over the body and forces the living entity to do what they're beckoning, because they have these strong material desires. They want engage in sense gratification. They might want to hurt someone. Now they're controlling a body where they can actually do these things. It's rather than just having a subtle body that can't do those things. So, whenever you see a person walking down the street talking to themselves, that person definitely is inhabited by a ghost. And you see this often, especially in Capitol Hill, and sometimes in Pioneer Square, sometimes downtown Seattle. Not so much in Sammamish, but it's also here also, but not as much as in those other places. So they're walking down the street talking to themselves or talking to something, in the ether. And they're actually crazy. And then anytime you meet a person that's talking complete nonsense, that's another person that's inhabited by a ghost. So there are many people that are ghostly haunted in this world. So, therefore, Prabhupada says, the devotee of the Lord, because of manifesting godly qualities, is called a demigod, whereas the atheist is called a demon. Well, okay, this is another class of crazy people. The atheists, they deny the existence of God. In fact, they're envious and hate God. And some of them are Mayavadis and impersonalists. The demons cannot stand the presence of Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. Well, that was the problem of Hiranyakashipu. When Prahlad Maharaj mentioned the name of Vishnu, he became determined to kill his son, just hearing the name of Vishnu. So when people talk about God, the demoniac people, the ghostly haunted people, they all object. They get upset. Just like if you mention the word God in school, right? Like you ask a question to the teacher. One time, one of my daughters, Ambika, just when she was a young girl, very young, maybe in second or third grade. So the teacher said something, about, I think, what was it? She might have said something like, nobody lives on the other planets, right? Might have been talking about astronomy. And Ambika raises her hand and says, no, that's not true. There are demigods and there are living entities on all the planets. And the teacher said, well, that's not true. No, she said, no, it's true. My dad told me, and he reads this book, and the Srimad Bhagvatam, and it says that. I said, oh, well, that's your religion. That has nothing to do with science. And Ambika was like shocked. So when she came home, she said to me, Dad, is it true that there's nobody lives on the other planets? I said, no. She said, but my teacher said so. And when I told her that's not true, she got a little angry at me, and she said, that's your religion. It has nothing to do with science. Is it? So this is the problem with these schools and these teachers. And whenever they hear the word God, they say, well, that's not scientific, so we're not concerned with that. We're only concerned with science, things that are proven to be true, which is not true, because most of the things that they say are proven to be true by science turn out to be not true over time. Like, for example, they say the sun is 93 million miles away from the Earth. Well, wait a minute. Sometimes the rotation of the sun on its axis and then in its trajectory may not be a perfect circle. It may be elliptical. So if it's or else the Earth's rotation on its axis and rotation around the sun may not be perfectly circular. It may be elliptical. That means that sometimes the sun could be more than 93 million miles, and other times it could be less than 93 million miles from the Earth, right? So, and then there's also the speed of light. When the speed of light, because of, Einstein was saying that because of gravity it can bend. So it might not be so fast sometimes, and it might be faster sometimes than but although he claimed that it was a constant, 176,000 miles per second. But now people are saying that, sometimes it can go a little faster, sometimes it can go a little slower, So all these assumptions that they teach in astronomy or in universal movements of the planets, and this and that, it's usually theoretical. It's not absolutely fact. But it's taught as absolute fact. And if anyone says anything a little bit different, and then they get upset or they threaten the student that this is not science. So, therefore, the demon cannot stand the presence of Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. The demons are always busy in trying to vanquish the personality of Godhead. But factually, as soon as the personality of Godhead appears, by either his transcendental name, form, attributes, pastimes, paraphernalia, or variegatedness, the demon is at once vanquished. It is said that a ghost cannot remain as soon as the holy name of the Lord is chanted. That's why we should always chant Hare Krishna, because that way ghosts and hobgoblins and demons will stay away from us. If you're always chanting Hare Krishna, just like there was this one Muslim man in Berkeley, California. He was a street vendor, and he had a table on Telegraph Avenue, and he would sell jewelry and different trinkets. And every time I would go by him, walking or doing Sankirtan, right? Every day we would go on Sankirtan on Telegraph Avenue. I would look at him and say, Hare Krishna. And you said, hey, go away. That's not God. Allah is God. Right? And then progressively I would say it louder and louder, and he would shout at me every time. Right? So one day, he came to the temple. And I couldn't believe it, And when I saw him, as usual, every time I would see him, I'd say, Hare Krishna. He'd say, stop it, you make me crazy. I said, well, why you come here? He said, I come here, I have to tell you something. I said, what is it? He said, on Telegraph Avenue, there are shaitani people, meaning there are demons, right? Shaitani, they use that word, shaitani. Satans. I said, so? He said, well, sometimes they come to my table, and one of them stand this side, other one stand that there in front of me, other one stand on that side. And one of them say, oh, how much is this? And I look over there, and the other one steals something. So he said, so one day the Shaitani people came, and I started to say, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Rama, Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. I started looking at them and saying it louder and louder, and they walked away. He said, your God is strong. He said, that's why I come here. I want to know a little bit more about your Hare Krishna. So after that, he started coming every day to wash the dishes and do service.
Jai.
Right. So this is a true story. And he was an Iranian guy. So Iranians are Vedic people who left the Vedic, following the Vedic path. So they have it in them to be philosophical, very philosophical. They're different than the Arabs. And they're very philosophical sometimes. And I mean, you can have fanatic Shia Muslims in Iran, but when a person is not too, when an Iranian is not too fanatical, they become very philosophical, and actually they know that in their history before Islam, they were not following Islam, they were following Zoroastrianism or other types of religions like that are offshoots of Vedic religions. So he became like a devotee. He didn't get initiated, but he would always come and do service. So that shows something about the holy name of the Lord, because when he started chanting it and looking at these people, they walked away, because demons don't like the name of the Lord when it's chanted. So Prabhupada says, the great saints and devotees of the Lord are in the list of his paraphernalia. Now, what does that mean? In the list of his paraphernalia. How can a person be a paraphernalia? Well, yeah, because devotees of the Lord Well, first of all the paraphernalia of the Lord is expansions of Lord Baladev and or Balaram, because he assists the Lord in all his transcendental pastimes. So he becomes the paraphernalia, like his seat. He becomes Anantashesha to support him as Narayana and so forth. So the devotees are part of the paraphernalia of the Lord. And because of that, tadiyanam samachara, they can be worshipped. In fact, in that verse, Aradhananam sarvesam, Vishnu Aradhanam param, tasmat samachara, tadiyanam, tasmat parataram devi tadiyanam samachara. That, but even greater, so in other words, Parvati asked Lord Shiva, who's the best person to worship? He said, yeah, the best person is Vishnu. But even greater than Vishnu is the worship, the devotee of Vishnu. So, therefore, a devotee is considered paraphernalia of the Lord. And because the devotee will take all kinds of risks to spread Krishna consciousness, even going to the demons and trying to convince them to become Krishna conscious. It's like Prahlad Maharaj. He goes to, his father challenges him and he doesn't stay quiet. He says, yeah, I get my strength and you get your strength from Lord Vishnu. Now, because of that, his father wanted to kill him, but Krishna protected him. So that means that the devotees are not foolish, but they are fearless. They're not afraid to stand up and speak the truth, even if it might be negative or detrimental for them. So, therefore, the devotees are on the list of the Lord's paraphernalia, and thus, as soon as a saintly devotee is present, the ghostly sins are at once vanquished. That is the verdict of all Vedic literatures. One is recommended, therefore, to associate only with saintly devotees so that worldly demons and ghosts cannot exert their sinister influence. Well, this is a very serious statement by Prabhupada. And this shows how important it is to be a devotee. When it says Chetodarpana Marjanam Baba Mahadevagni Vapanam, that first statement, Cheto Darpana Varjanam, means that by chanting Hare Krishna, you become purified of sinful, not only sinful acts that you performed in the past, the results of those sinful acts, but you become purified of the desire to sin. And all the samskaras that are performed in the Vedic tradition, they're all meant for purification. But if someone chants Hare Krishna, you don't have to do all those samskaras. You simply continue chanting and you get purified. Chanting and then following the regulative principles. No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. You become purified, and rather quickly. And that is the purpose of Vedic knowledge. It's to help one become purified so that they can become a devotee and transcend the influence and the modes of material nature. Therefore it says, Atak pumbir dvijasestas, varnashram vibhagasaha, swanistitasya satdharmasya samsiddhir haridoshanam. O best among the twice-born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste divisions and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. Haritoshanam. This is Srimad Bhagvatam, 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, 13th verse. Well, yesterday we discussed something and I didn't finish it, so I want to just finish that quickly and then get to this point of Varnashram. Yesterday we were discussing how the Gopis sometimes are described as being lusty. But Prabhupada explains this. He says, the lusty attitude of the Gopis does not refer to any sort of sex indulgence, Srila Rupa Goswami explains that this lusty desire refers to the devotee's particular attitude of association with Krishna. Every devotee in his perfectional stage has a spontaneous attraction to the Lord. This attraction is sometimes called the lusty desire of the devotee. The lust is the devotee's excessive desire to serve the Lord in a particular capacity. That's the point. It's not lust for one's personal sense gratification. It's the extreme, let's say, desire to serve the Lord in a particular capacity. Such a desire may seem to be desire for enjoying the Lord, but actually the endeavor is to serve the Lord in that capacity. For example, a devotee may be desiring to associate with the Personality of Godhead as his cowherd friend. He will want to serve the Lord by assisting him in controlling the cows in the pasturing ground. This may appear to be a desire to enjoy the company of the Lord, but actually it is spontaneous love, serving him by assisting in managing the transcendental cows. This is also explained in the Nectar of Devotion, where it says, there's such a thing as sensual attraction. The gopis, however, wanted nothing at all but to gratify the senses of the Lord, and there is no instance of this in the material world. So in other words, you're not going to find in the material world people who have no other desire than to serve Krishna or anybody without any expectation of anything in return. Even a mother who's serving her child with love, but they're expecting something in return. They're expecting that the child will smile, that the child will let the mom cuddle her or him, that the child will be obedient and listen to what the mom says, and the child, when they grow up, they'll protect the mom. You know, those are natural expectations, and when it doesn't happen, it really is devastating to the mother or the father. But in the case of the gopis, they do not expect anything in return. Therefore, the gopis' ecstatic love for Krishna is sometimes described by scholars as being like the lusty desire of the material world. But actually, this should not be taken as a literal fact. It is simply a way of trying to understand the transcendental situation. So when a materialistic person reads the Bhagavatam and they jump right away to the 10th canto because they've heard about so-called sexual activity of the Lord, you know, when it says Lord Chaitanya's special contribution to progressive knowledge of Krishna consciousness was to explain the conjugal relationship. Well, conjugal relationship or nuptial relationship, it means normal mundane life. It means having sex with one's wife, right? But those words are, as Prabhupada says here, therefore the gopis' ecstatic love for Krishna is sometimes described by scholars as being like the lusty desire of the material world. But actually, this should not be taken as a literal fact. It is simply a way of trying to understand the transcendental situation. Great devotees, up to the standard of Uddhava, are very dear friends of the Lord, and they desire to follow in the footsteps of the gopis. So the gopis' love for Krishna is certainly not material lusty desire. Otherwise, how could Uddhava aspire to follow in their footsteps? Another instance is Lord Chaitanya himself. After accepting the sannyas order of life, he was very, very strict about avoiding association with women. But still, he taught that there is no better method of worshiping Krishna than that conceived by the gopis. Thus, the gopis' method of worshiping the Lord, as if impelled by lusty desire, was praised very highly, even by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This very fact means that although the attraction of the gopis for Krishna appears to be lusty, it is not in the least bit material. Unless one is fully situated in the transcendental position, the relationship of the gopis with Kṛṣṇa is very difficult to understand. But because it appears to be just like ordinary dealings of young boys and girls, it is sometimes misinterpreted to be like the ordinary sex of this material world. Unfortunately, persons who cannot understand the transcendental nature of the love affairs of the gopis and Kṛṣṇa take it for granted that Kṛṣṇa's love affairs with the gopis are mundane transactions, and therefore they sometimes indulge in painting licentious pictures in some modernistic style. So this, he's talking about Rajasthani paintings in which Kṛṣṇa seems to be involved in ordinary loving affairs with the gopis. Not all Rajasthani paintings, but some of them. And then also modern adaptations of them, of Rajasthani style. On the other hand, the lusty desire of Kubja is described by learned scholars as being almost lusty desire. Kubja was a hunchbacked woman who also wanted Kṛṣṇa with great ecstatic love, but her desire for Kṛṣṇa was almost mundane, and so her love cannot be compared to the love of the gopis. Her loving affection for Kṛṣṇa is called kama praya, or almost like the gopis' love for Kṛṣṇa. So, the other day we read that pure devotees avoid this association of women and association of powerful people who have a lot of money, like kings. Well, if I was a woman and I heard that, and I didn't have any background in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, I would say, oh, this is a red flag. That means the Hare Krishnas are misogynists. Misogynist is a big word that means hate women. No, it's not what it means. Just like describing Kṛṣṇa, the gopis as being lusty, having lusty desires, doesn't mean that they're like ordinary women who have lusty desires. What's interesting is we also yesterday heard about the personified Vedas, who are persons, and they were men, and they all wanted to become gopis, women. But not just ordinary women, gopis, who have this ecstatic, loving relationship with Kṛṣṇa. So the greatest, what seems to be fallen in the material world, which is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, is the complete opposite in the spiritual world. The greatest devotees of the Lord are women. They're not men. Of course, the men or the males in the spiritual world are also feminine in their relationship with the Lord. That means that they are subordinate to the Lord. But the women are the ones who have the closest relationship, and of course there's Srimati Radharani, who has the unparalleled relationship with Kṛṣṇa. So what is considered not so great in the material world is the complete opposite in the spiritual world. And also, when it says to avoid the association of women, it's talking about materialistic women, not devotee women. So all these things take time to understand. But if we just read in a cursory way the Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagvatam, and we'd say, oh, they closed the book like, I'm not going to read this anymore because this is a misogynist movement. And many women come to that conclusion. Even devotee women sometimes come to that conclusion that this is a hate women movement. It's not at all. But it takes time to hear the correct explanation of these things. Therefore, it says, as far as we are concerned, being different demigods in charge of the different parts of Vedic knowledge, no, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Therefore, it says, unless one is fully situated in the transcendental position, the relationship of the gopis with Kṛṣṇa is very difficult to understand. But because it appears to be just like ordinary dealings of young boys and girls, it is sometimes misinterpreted to be like the ordinary sex of this material world. Unfortunately, persons who cannot understand the transcendental nature of the love affairs of the gopis and Kṛṣṇa take it for granted that Kṛṣṇa's love affairs with the gopis are mundane transactions, and therefore they sometimes indulge in painting licentious pictures in some modernistic style. On the other hand, so by showing that the lusty desire of Kubja was not exactly like the gopis' lust for Kṛṣṇa, because Kubja was attracted to Kṛṣṇa, and because after Kṛṣṇa straightened out her hunchback and made her into a beautiful woman, she developed desire to enjoy, and so her approaching Kṛṣṇa and with the desire to have intimate relationship with him was not the same as the gopis. So here we see so many little fine details are given by the acharyas to understand correctly what it means to be Visuddha Sattva devotee of the Lord, pure devotee of the Lord, without any hint of material lust or avarice or anything like that. So this requires careful hearing and chanting to understand these things. Otherwise, very easily we become derailed from the path of pure devotional service. Now, another example of that is sometimes devotees give lectures, and they're considered to be authorities. And there was one lecture that was given, and this thing is being discussed by a lot of senior devotees right now, in the ILS. ILS is the meeting of devotees from around the world to discuss how to improve Kṛṣṇa consciousness. And it happens once every 2 years, I think, in Mayapur. So one devotee gave a long lecture there about how the Varnashram system is nonsense and it's not for devotees. Well, that's not true. Although, let's hear what Prabhupada says about the Varnashram systems. See, because sometimes devotees just go off the rails and speculate because they don't read carefully, they don't hear the explanations carefully of senior devotees, and then they come up with their own theories. So, in this verse, Atak Pumbridrija Sestas 1-13, Prabhupada writes, human society all over the world is divided into 4 castes and 4 orders of life. The 4 castes are the intelligent caste, the martial caste or the military caste, the productive caste, and the laborer caste. These castes are classified in terms of one's work and qualification, and not by birth. Then again, there are 4 orders of life, namely the student life, the householder life, the retired life, and the devotional life. In the best interest of human society, there must be such a division of life. Otherwise, no social institution can grow in a healthy state. And in each and every one of the above-mentioned divisions of life, the aim must be to please the supreme authority of the Personality of Godhead. This institutional function of human society is known as the system of Varna Ashrama Dharma, which is quite natural for the civilized life. The Varna Ashrama institution is constructed to enable one to realize the absolute truth. It is not for artificial domination of one division over another. When the aim of life, that is, realization of the absolute truth, is missed by too much attachment for indriya priti, or sense gratification. As already discussed herein before, the institution of Varnashram is utilized by selfish men to pose an artificial predominance over the weaker section. In Kali Yuga, or the age of quarrel, this artificial predominance is already current, but the saner section of the people know it well, that the divisions of castes and orders of life are meant for smooth social intercourse and high-thinking self-realization, and not for any other purpose. So, what has happened over time in India was that due to selfish desires of the Brahmins, they changed one word of the Shastra. So from Chaturvanya Mayashristam Gunakarma Vibhagasaha, they said Janma Karma Vibhagasaha. They changed the word guna to janma and created the false caste system that's being practiced in India today. And why did they do that? Because they wanted these selfish men, meaning Brahmins, who wanted to pass on their privileges to their children, whether the children are trained properly or not. These selfish men pose an artificial predominance over the weaker section meaning Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, especially Sudras, and it's an artificial predominance. And he says this artificial predominance is already current. But the saner section of the people know it well, that the divisions of caste and the orders of life are meant for smooth social intercourse and high thinking, self-realization, and not for any other purpose. So, for many years, Prabhupada was explaining a discussion between Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya, where Lord Chaitanya, when this verse was presented to him, Atak Pumbir Dvija, he said, no, tell me something else. This is not the best way to be Krishna conscious. So then Ramananda Roy kept saying other things, and finally he came to the point that no matter what your caste is, or what your qualifications are, or lack of qualifications, just sit down and regularly hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagvatam spoken by genuine devotees. And that is the best way to become Krishna conscious. But yet, before Prabhupada disappeared, near the last days, he was with us, he said, I've only done half of my work. What remains is Varnashram Dharma. Wow! The devotees were shocked when they heard that, because it sounded as if he was contradicting himself, and maybe contradicting Lord Chaitanya. But actually not, because the Varnashram system is created by Krishna himself. Chaturvanyam mayasristam gunakarma vibhagasaha. And why is it created? It's to help the mass of people gradually make progress toward Krishna consciousness. So he explains this. He says, herein, the statement of the Bhagavatam is that the highest aim of life, or the highest perfection of the institution of Varnashram Dharma, is to cooperate jointly for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 4.13. Here, that's the verse, Chaturvanyam mayasristam gunakarma vibhagasaha. Here, Sutta Goswami addresses his audience with the word Dvija Shrestaha, O best of the Brahmanas. This indicates that they are devotees of Krishna and the best learned scholars. In this age, everyone is born as Sudra, a fourth-class man. Janmana jayate Sudra. By reformatory practices, one can become a third-class man, a Dvija. Samskarat bhaved Dvija. By cultivation of knowledge and culture, one becomes a second-class man, a Vipra. Veda patad bhaved Vipra. But only one who knows Brahman is a first-class man, a Brahmana. Brahma janati di Brahmana. And because the sages of Naimisharanya are the best of the Brahmanas, they know not only Brahman, but Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see that the Varnashram system is to gradually help people progress in spiritual life and come to the level of transcendental devotees. That's the purpose of it. And all the while, it's to keep everyone in society peaceful and cooperating, working with each other. Remember, Prabhupada said, you will show your love for me by cooperating with each other, right? So this Varnashram system, the whole purpose of it is, as it says, to cooperate jointly for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. So that is the purpose of the Varnashram system. So these upstart devotees in the ILS meeting last year started saying the Varnashram system is junk. It's not for devotees. We're transcendental to it. We're not subject to the modes of material nature. Those statements are deviations from Prabhupada's instructions. But it's very easy to deviate if you don't sit down regularly, meaning every day, and hear and discuss and learn the real explanation of things. And it takes time to hear the real explanation of things. So therefore, then Prabhupada says, the Brahminical class is essential for actual human civilization, which begins with the social system of Varna Ashrama Dharma, 4 Varnas and 4 Ashramas. The 4 Varnas are the Brahmanas, the priests and intellectuals, the Kshatriyas, the warriors and administrators, the Vaishyas, the farmers and merchants, and the Sudras, the manual workers. The 4 Ashramas are the Brahmacharis, the celibate students, the Grihastas, the householders, the Vanaprasthas, the retirees, and the Sannyasis, the renunciates. Unless human society is scientifically organized according to this Varnashrama system, it is animal society. It is not human society. And in animal society, you cannot expect any intelligence or any sense of goodness or any idea of God. It is not possible. Now we see why Prabhupada said, I only did half of my work. The other half remains, Varnashram Dharma. Because it's a way of organizing the whole society to make, scientifically, to make spiritual progress. Okay, I'll stop right there. I'll continue on this subject a little bit more tomorrow. Are there any questions? Okay, start all over.
So Maharaj, you said the Brahmanas changed from the Guna Karma Vibhagasha to Janma Karma Vibhagasha, but
one word. One word.
Yeah, but where did they change? Because in the Bhagavad Gita, I mean, did they have a different variation of Bhagavad Gita? Or?
They made their own variation because they had complete control of Sanskrit learning.
And which sampradaya?
But it's just like the devotee who gives a lecture in ILS. That ILS is where the devotees come from, all the leaders or leading preachers come from all over the world to discuss how to improve ISKCON. And this one devotee gives this lecture saying the Varnashram system is junk. It's not for devotees. We're transcendental to this system. We're above the modes of material nature. Well, even if that is true, but still Prabhupada wanted the Varnashram system to be instituted for helping the majority of the population that is not going to take up Krishna consciousness right away.
I think even Kṛṣṇa in Bhagavad Gita says that even he follows the system so that...
well, no, he gave that example as a perfect householder in Dwarka.
Yeah.
And he also accepted Guru, right?
Correct.
So, so it's very easy. So even if they don't physically change the word, but their interpretation of it, and the way it's put into practice, that's what counts. And you see what they put into practice. They created this false caste system. They won't let the Dalits into temples. They won't accept food from devotees, because even though the devotees are initiated Brahminically and everything, they were not born in India. So you see how it develops through their actual practice. But they did change, physically they did change one word. But you change one word of the Shastra, look at the effect it can have.
Correct.
See? So therefore, to be perfectly integral in your understanding of pure devotional service, this is what Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was insisting on. And this is the original teaching that Lord Chaitanya gave. But to understand this can take a long time of regular hearing. And it's very easy to deviate, where you have these advanced, so-called advanced devotees giving lectures completely opposite to what Prabhupada said. And they're preaching to the world leaders, world preachers. So there have been many deviant tendencies like this. The Ritvik movement was a deviant. Wait a minute, if you ask a question, it has to come up here. So many deviant things come up over time because of people's incomplete understanding, because they don't listen carefully to the classes spoken by genuine devotees. Right? And they don't carefully read Prabhupada's instructions. Just like if it says, pure devotees avoid the association of women, a girl who's been trained in feminism will read that and say, oh, that's it, I'm not going to read anything else. This is a misogynist movement. They don't ask any questions. They don't want to get any clarification. They have this prejudiced point of view. So we'll talk about this somewhere. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.